Please welcome back Sean Baker. And we also have actors James Ransone and Karin Karagulian. We also have the director of photography, Radium Chung, and the producers, Shi-Cheng So and Darren Dean.
Maya, Kiki, Mickey, Ala, and the rest of the cast say hello. They're all doing Q&As, different areas and different places. So.
Well, we're lucky to have so many of you here today. So we'll start at the beginning. Where did this project start? How did it get going? Could you talk a little about that, Sean?
Sure. Chris Brigosh and I, we co-wrote my previous film together, Starlet. It really stems from this corner of Santa Monica and Highland is about a half a mile from where I live in Los Angeles, and I was drawn to it just from a filmmaker's point of view of when I moved out to Los Angeles, I was sort of amazed by how little of Los Angeles was actually put up on the screen in film and television. And when we think of LA, we think of, because of what the mainstream cinema has shown us, we think of the Walk of Fame and the Hollywood Boulevard and the Hollywood sign, Beverly Hills, etc. But I found all these little nooks and crannies that I was particularly interested in. And there was this one corner. It's sort of an unofficial red light district. It's infamous because it's gone back for decades now. And I knew that there would be some stories. There had to be stories to be told there, and I was just drawn to it, and I was wondering why it's never been shown on film and TV. So Chris and I, we're cisgender, white, straight men. We knew that the only way to go about doing this was just to really apply the same research process that we did to one of my previous films called Prince of Broadway, which is really spending a lot of time in the area and finding a collaborator. And Prince of Broadway took about a year, and this one took about 8 months, where we just pounded the pavement and introduced ourselves to people, and we were looking for something. We didn't really have any idea. We didn't want to impose a script or any sort of plot. So we eventually found Maya Taylor. Maya Taylor was actually hanging out with some friends at the LGBT Center, which is about a block away from this intersection. And I went up to her in one of those moments where she was our passport. We introduced ourselves, and she expressed this wonderful enthusiasm. She is an aspiring actress, and now a full-fledged actress. And right off the bat, she was like, "I want to work with you." And we exchanged contact information. It went from there, and we started hanging out regularly, hearing all of the stories that she had, anecdotes, etc. And then it was one day, I'll shut up soon. Sorry, I know it's long-winded. But it was one day that she brought Kiki to the table. We were hanging out at the local Jack in the Box restaurant, if you can call it a restaurant. And she sat down across the table from us next to Maya, Kiki did. And the second I saw the two of them together, I thought, dynamic duo right there. They complemented each other, they contrasted each other, they were finishing each other's sentences, they were setting up jokes, delivering punchlines, and I just thought, we're gonna have to write two characters for these two women to play. And it went from there.
And I know that collaboration you mentioned is very important to you, so could you talk a little bit about, once you were at that point and going forward, what that collaboration looked like with the script and
Sure.
Also the acting?
Well, at that point, when I knew it was gonna be about basically, Chris and I we wanted to apply some sort of universal theme, right? Something that anybody, anywhere in the world can identify with. And once we saw the two together and knew we were going to be writing for them, we thought this is a film about friendship, right? So then I at that point, I told the girls, I was like, I have 3 ideas, and they're very simple. They're not even fleshed out. One, it has to take place on one night because of our budget. We need, wardrobe changes cost money, so it needs to take place in a 24-hour period. Number 2, I think it's about one person finding another person, or 2 people coming together. And number 3, I want everybody to converge at the end at donut time. I want this climactic Mike Lee-ish scene, very Mike Lee influenced. And so I then, we started throwing around ideas, and Kiki, about 2 weeks later, said to me, I have an idea for you. There's a story that happened. It never really even played itself out to fruition in real life, but it was something that was being contemplated by one of the girls in the neighborhood when she found out that her boyfriend was cheating on her with a quote-unquote fish. And we said, excuse me, can you define that? And Chris and I just immediately thought, okay, that's our A plot. It's extremely dynamic. I mean, it takes the characters on a journey. It's layered. And so really it was from there that we started doing these script mints, which was half a script, half a treatment, workshop sessions, et cetera, and just involving the girls all along, throughout the whole entire process, and all the way through post-production, actually.
And in addition to these first-time actors, you have a couple up here tonight who you've worked with several times before. So James and Karin, I was wondering if you could talk a bit about what it's like collaborating with the director across multiple projects.
Well, this is my 5th film with Sean. We go way back. And normally, when he has a project, he calls me up. He says, I have this project. How do we work you into it? So in this time, I said, if it's an LA movie, then all the cab drivers in LA are Armenian. So what about a cab driver? So then it went to Razmik having his whole family. Yeah, so in previous times, he just, one film we did before this, he just called me up. He said, hey, I have a project. Will you be able to play a porn producer? I said no, but the next thing I knew, I was in LA playing my role in Starlet. And with the one previous, he just showed up at my work one day and he said, hey, I got some money together, I bought a camera, let's go make Prince of Broadway. So that was our last 3 films.
Sean and I met at a 24-hour vet when my dog got hit by a car. This is true. On 17th Street. And he was like, I really liked you on The Wire. And I was like, thanks, dude. My dog's almost dead, but sweet of you.
I waited to the end of the night.
Yeah, it was cool. He wasn't like, Ziggy, in my face. And then I would have been like, I don't know, fucking whoop your ass in a vet's office. Like,
I mentioned Ken Park.
Yeah, which is like, the dude's like, I've seen your dick, basically, is what was by seeing Ken Park. But then what happened was we started seeing each other around, and I kind of understood the types of movies that Sean were making, which were, like vocational movies, right? So that's the running thread that I see, is like as a human being more than their job, right? And I was like, oh, that's interesting to me, not just as an actor, just as a person. So he's like, I'm making this movie about porn in the Valley, and he told me at Crunch. I was like, all right, let's go do it. Like, let's just call me when you're ready. And so that ended up being a really fun experience for me. It was a lot more controlled than Tangerine, obviously, because we were shooting in a house. And so for this, he originally wanted me to do it, and then he was like, well, it's really similar to the character in Starlet. And I was like, okay. And then he asked me for a friend of mine's number. And so I was like, yeah. And then I put in a good word with him, and he's like, hey, your friend never called me back, so you free 2 days in January. I was like, thanks. And so I showed up, and I did it, and then, but more in the spirit of your question about the collaborative effort, is that what's really cool, and I was thinking about this, is like this movie in some ways is the promise of what has been talked about the last couple of years with the democratization of creativity, right? So it's like, oh, fuck, this finally like come to fruition. But along with that, and I think like what you can sort of feel, and I feel incredibly lucky to be a part of it, is that it's like completely this weird socialist way that Sean is making movies, where he's like, what does everyone think? And it's like, well, I think, and then it ends up, which is fucking crazy, because that's actually not how most movies are made. And I think that that's why it feels so refreshing, and why if Sean would ask me to do anything, at this point, like, we're gonna do another movie together, and I'm sure Karin will. I think for the next one, it's like, oh, I'll just show up in pre-production and then put my 2 cents in what I think should go on there. And it's actually like a really, it's a really special process. And I think that as Sean matures and obviously like it becomes like he's becoming really confident. It's like you can see that it just it comes out of the screen that like everybody is sort of equally involved. So it's pretty incredible, you know.
And going back to this idea that the film started with a place, obviously it has a very strong sense of place, and I'd be curious to hear about working in all of these places, maybe from Darren and Xiqing, and especially with having it be set on the streets, and also with public transport in LA, which is something you never see really. So Darren or Sean or Xiqing.
You want to go first?
You want to bring and takeout stuff? Because we have our distributors of takeout over there. Ashil Baghdadi and Mike Sergio of Cavu. And
it's actually very similar to how, like we work, when we, Sean and I make takeout together, we found this little takeout restaurant. And then we just went in there and then got their trust. And we worked there when they never shut down the business. So we just work. When there's no customer, we just, we go in there, shoot for like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and we come out when they're busy. So in donut time, it's exactly the same thing. And we only got 2 nights, and we're like, okay, we have to really, work this. And at the time, the owner is in the back making donuts. So I said, well, Sean called me. I think we just decided me as the donut time owner, like the day off. So he said, okay, well, you're just going to be the manager and jump in there and, do this. So I said, okay, well, I kind of know how they doing business, right? Every day, day in, day out. So that was very interesting, shooting at the working donut shop. And then sometimes I had to sell donuts to the real customer because...
That's true, like in the middle of a take, too.
Yeah, I just have to work it in because we don't want to cut. We don't want to, clean. We cannot bother the customer. So it's really interesting.
And remember, she was also continuity on the film. So as she's acting
and costume and
everything.
operating a camera and acting in it. Yeah.
And when we got to the streets, there was a level of intimacy, obviously, with the actors and the iPhone, and that afforded us a lot of, these really close, very intimate shots. On the street, there was a compact, element to it that enabled us to move very quickly and shoot on, city buses and things like that. And we owned all of our locations, but it was just very, very easy to move around without disrupting people, without creating any, element of like, we're these guys with these big cameras. When you're working on a set where your heaviest piece of equipment is your boom, there's something very kind of fleet of foot about it. So that was definitely a real fun part. It created a lot of the energy of the film, and again, the intimacy came from that.
I'm glad you did my segue for me, but I want to obviously talk about shooting on the iPhone. I was wondering if you could describe a bit what your setup was. Maybe Radium, you could talk about it, and
Radium's favorite question.
All the things that you did to turn that into what we saw on the screen tonight.
Shut up, James. By the way, James just sound like he just cast himself in our next movie.
I did not. That is not true.
Had it been anybody else but Sean who called me and asked me to shoot a movie on a couple of phones, I would have said, "Get the fuck out of here," and hung up. And I was tempted to do that even with Sean. It was. It took a little convincing. But Sean had done a lot of research while I was busy shooting another show in New York. He was in LA, being the unemployed director. He had all the time to did all the research on the phone, and he was able to find this little. Well, first there's the app that lets you lock down quite a few important perimeters, and then he found these anamorphic lens that was made by Moondog Labs, which at the time wasn't shipped yet. They were just in crowdfunding phase, and Sean was able to convince them to lend us 3 of them. And what's interesting, they were still kind of in prototype phase, so they weren't standardized yet. So the 3 are all different. They weigh a little different. So every time you change the lens, or you change the camera on the rig, it's like, oh, you got to rebalance it. So with that, it was it just elevated the look of the film so much from what could have been a home video looking like movie to a much more professional looking like film.
Would you do it
Did I answer the
again?
question? No, absolutely not. Absolutely, do not even call. But you know what? It turned out to be really the right camera for us because we shot a lot on the street, as you guys saw, and Shishing and Darren were able to get all the permits, all the right permits. So we were, you know, all properly permitted on the street, but we didn't have anybody to lock down the street and ask people not to come and interrupt the scene. So with that, shooting with a couple of phones were a great advantage because people walk right through and they took long and they walk right through. They didn't care. No, they didn't take us seriously. This is like some guys with a phone, you know. Nobody took it seriously.
As somebody said, yeah, Darren just said the biggest footprint was the sound gear. You know, we actually had to sometimes ask Iron Strauss, who is our wonderful sound mixer, to hide his cart behind Donut Time and to lose the boom, because that was really the only giveaway we were shooting something semi-professional.
And
He kind of had the hardest job to be. I mean, honestly, like he like was in full. I think he had a nervous breakdown.
He's 6'5", and every time we have a cab shot, he's in the trunk, including the car wash. He's a trooper. But you know what? He does amazing work. He's an incredible, you know, location sound mixer. And
I said this at another Q&A, and I'm going to say it again. He was crying at the Donut Time scene.
it was rough on him. But no, I you know, that's the one thing I said. I get a lot of questions on like Twitter and Facebook about how we recorded on the iPhone. We didn't. You know, this was a professional sound job. We sunk everything in post. You know, that's important. It's what bad sound is what really separates you from, you know, not professional to professional. Yes.
Driving scenes are the most fun for Iron because he's you know, he's always, you know, like Sean said, he's 6 foot tall or taller than that. He's hiding in the trunk. Now actors often forget there's a sound man in the trunk while they're driving. So I remember on Starlet, which I hope some of you are staying to watch on the next movie. There were some driving scenes that Stella completely forgot Iron was there. She wasn't driving any, you know, she wasn't like, you know, going crazy with the driving, but she just wasn't thinking somebody's in there. So 10 minutes later, Iron came out throwing up, and he was so mad once. It was just funny. So.
all right, we don't have a ton of time, but I do want to just get a question from the audience. Is there anyone with a burning question out there? Sure, down here. So I'm just going to repeat it. The question is about cameras and what the setup this time gave you, or what benefits it had that you didn't have in previous films.
Yeah. One of the benefits that the iPhone actually revealed to us while we were actually shooting was the fact that we, you know, I like to work with first timers and mix them with seasoned actors, right? So, in this case, Maya and Kiki were first timers, and usually, from what I've noticed in the past, it takes about a week for first-timers to get comfortable, to get over that hump, because they usually have a big camera in their face. In this case, you know, Maya and Kiki were comfortable from day one, minute one, where I saw that, you know, we were using a device that they owned themselves. So between takes, they were whipping out their own cell phones and taking selfies and stuff. So it was something that the intimidation factor was wiped away, and I saw that Maya and Kiki had this confidence level that was on the same level as these two guys from the very beginning. So that was a wonderful thing that I really actually didn't see coming until I was there on the first couple of days of shooting.
And I think we have time for one more. Yes, right there.
actually,
So,
quite the
sorry, 1 second. So the question was whether Maya and Kiki, the main actresses, had any reservations about the roles they were playing.
Yeah, no, actually, quite the opposite. They are very close friends with women who work the area. They basically have witnessed a ton themselves, and they wanted this story to be told. It was funny because, not funny, but there was something very interesting that happened very early on, because this film definitely leans a little more towards comedy than my other films. But there was something that was very important that Maya said to me about, even before I met Kiki. I had already shown her my other films. She understood my sensibility, and she said to me, I trust you. I want to make this film with you, but you have to promise me 2 things. And number 1, you have to show like the harsh reality of what goes on out here. These women are here because they have to be. I watch. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. Even if it's brutal, even if it's hard to watch, even if it's on PC, I want you to show this. And then she goes, and number 2, I want you to make this hilarious. I want you to make this entertaining for us and for the women who are actually working the corner. And I looked at her and I was like, are you serious right now? That's going to be a hard balancing act. But I went home and I thought about it, and I thought about it over the next few days, and I realized that, she was asking for something that was actually my approach. I thought might have been more of a plight of type of film going in, and not really using the humor that I saw these women use themselves to cope every day. And then I realized how right she was, and she was asking for something that was, that would be presenting these characters to like the mainstream audiences in a pop culture way, so that they could identify with them, because that's how we reach our mainstream. We reach them through pop culture. So I'm really happy she said that to me. It was a very important turning point for the way that we made this film, I think. And in post-production, I witnessed firsthand how difficult, trans women of color, what they have to deal with, especially there in that area, coming from poverty. I watched Maya get turned down from over 60-something jobs. And, she knows automobiles, cars, in and out. Like, she knows cars like you wouldn't believe. She was turned down by every car dealership, every garage. They always gave her the runaround. And it was something that I just, I witnessed it. I knew, this is something that's real. The oppression, the discrimination that they have to deal with, But, so yes, I hope I answered that question.
Great. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for. If you want to hear more from Sean, he was really nice and did an interview for our podcast. So go to our website, filmlink.com, listen to that, subscribe. And Tangerine opens here and elsewhere tomorrow. So please tell all your friends to see this amazing film. And thanks for coming. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.